Welcome to Nadir Audio. The channel just recently hit 1,000 subscribers, which is really amazing. So I wanted to send out a huge thank you to everyone who subscribed and watches the videos. It really does mean a lot. So today I thought it'd be fun to do a quick update of what's going on here at the channel and talk a little bit about what you're going to be seeing in upcoming months. So let's get started. So I did recently upgrade my 10-year-old Apple TV with a new TV 4K, and this is what I use as a streamer in my system. And I will say that I'm not a huge streamer guy, and that's not because I have anything against streamers per se. I definitely understand how convenient they can be, and I understand why they're popular with people. But there's a couple reasons why I don't use them all that much. The first is just that I really like physical media, CDs, vinyl, even cassettes. I just really like the process of playing those. That's what I grew up with. And the other thing is that I do have to stare at a computer screen all day for my day job, and I use my iPhone and my iPad just as much as anybody else. So when I am using my system, I'd prefer to avoid screens if possible. And if I do need to use a screen, I'd much rather use the television screen that's part of my stereo rather than using my iPad or my iPhone. I just find that a more pleasurable experience. So I actually use an Apple TV, and I'm using Apple Home Sharing. So I have a laptop that has my entire music library on it, and then I'm using Apple Home Sharing to share that with the Apple TV, and I can play anything on there. And I will say that one of the reasons that I wanted to upgrade, I've been fine with this older Apple TV. It did everything I needed. For the most part, I was just using it for things that I only have files of where physical media is not available. But I have found myself using it a lot more this year, and that has a lot to do with getting the Chord Mojo 2 as a DAC in my system. The improvement in sound has been really great, and so I just kind of enjoyed listening to streaming stuff as much as anything else since I did that upgrade. So yeah, that's been really nice, and it's got me to be doing streaming a little bit more. And so I thought, well, if I'm going to be doing this more, I do really want to upgrade. I want to get that newer interface of the newer TVs and also be able to use the App Store and install various apps. So far, I've played around with a few apps. There aren't any music apps I've encountered that I would say are essential, but it's nice to be able to play around with those, download them, try them out, and I will be trying out more. If I come across something I really like, I'll definitely be updating the channel in the future. But if we take a quick look here, so we've got our new Apple TV 4K on the right here, and then we have the older one on the left. So the new one has a slightly smaller footprint, but it's slightly taller, so really they take about the same amount of space. So if you turn them around to the back, you'll see that one thing that the older Apple TV has that the new one doesn't is an optical out. And while I do like having that on there, it's not a huge loss. Like everybody else, I have several HDMI sources running into my television, and then I'm using the optical out from the television to go into the Chord Mojo 2, and so I probably wouldn't be using that anyway. I wasn't using it recently, but I have used it in the past, so that's not a big loss. Another big upgrade we get is a much nicer remote. We can see here the remote is larger, it feels better in the hand, it has more controls, which is sort of nice. The enter button here is actually also sort of a trackpad, which I found it takes a little bit getting used to, but I found that I do like it the more I use it. And yeah, I do like the new interface on the TV. It's a little nicer to use, and I find that every once in a while, the old Apple TV was pretty good. I could usually connect wirelessly to my library, and it sounded good, but every once in a while, I might have some Wi-Fi type issues. I've seen less of that since I've moved over to the new one, so that may be because it's using all newer software for that sort of thing. I'm not really sure, but I do appreciate the new interface. I think it's pretty nice. So I would say that, an Apple TV for me, because most of my listening is not done with the streamer, it works perfectly well. We may explore some streamers in the future on this channel, but for now I think we're going to stick with this new TV 4K. Another thing I wanted to talk about was using Discogs in 2024. A few months ago, I saw a video on the Audiophile Barista's channel, and if you haven't checked that out, I definitely would recommend it. He goes pretty in depth on his personal systems, setting them up, improving sound, upgrading, all that kind of stuff, so it's right up my alley. But he had mentioned that he uses Discogs primarily as a way to catalog his collection, his rather large collection of physical media, so that when he's out and about shopping somewhere, if he finds a particular thing, he can see, oh, do I already have that version? This is a good way to avoid duplicate purchases, especially when you have a very large collection. And I thought that was interesting because that's exactly the way that I use Discogs. So I don't have my entire collection in there, but I do have a good chunk of my physical media in there. So a little bit over 300 titles at the moment. But I found this very handy when I go to record stores. We have a lot of good record stores here in Austin. I found it useful earlier this year when I went to the 2024 Austin Record Convention. And I was looking at some things and I couldn't quite remember if I had a specific version of something. And so it was really handy to be able to look it up. So that's very cool. I think that's cool that somebody else is using it the way that I'm using it. Now, it is very time consuming to enter your collection into Discogs, especially if you have a large collection. So is it worth it just for this? Well, I think probably not, unless like me, you really just enjoy cataloging things. So the cataloging is sort of part of the fun. And also it is taking me a while. Like I said, I don't have my entire collection in there, but I'm getting close, which is kind of cool. So I will say I also use Discogs for purchases, not often, but when I'm looking for something very specific and I can't find it elsewhere, I will purchase it on Discogs, and it's a good place for that. I will say it's very similar to using eBay if you use eBay. So, you know, some things tend to be overpriced. You have to be a little careful, and there certainly are some deadbeat sellers. I've had a couple of occasions with that, so you do need to be careful. But I think it is a good place to hunt down those things that you have trouble finding elsewhere. But I really like it as a place to catalog my system so that when I'm purchasing in whatever context, I can at a glance take a look and see what I have in my collection. So one last thing I thought I'd talk about today is a preview of these Triangle Bro 3 speakers. I've wanted a pair of these for years since I first saw that video on Zero Fidelity. And I recently, a couple months ago, was able to pick up a pair, and I'm really enjoying listening to these. So we're going to do a full review soon, so that will probably be the next video that comes out in the next month or so. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, this year I've been able to get a couple of pairs of sort of iconic speakers that I've been wanting to try out for a while. We tried out the Klipsch RP 600M Mark IIs earlier this year, and I really like those, especially with my tube system. And now I'm trying out the triangles, so we'll have a video on those soon. So this year we've sort of focused on some speakers, and we focused on DACs, the Chord Mojo 2 of course, and I'll also probably have another vintage hi-fi coming out before the end of the year. But I think for next year, we'll probably change the focus a little bit. So we may get in another DAC, because that's something I'm still enjoying experimenting with. But I also want to look into upgrading my vinyl playback system, start experimenting with different phono preamps, and maybe even another upgrade for the turntable. So vinyl will definitely be a focus for next year, but we'll talk a little bit more about that in the end of the year State of the Stereo video, which will probably come out in December. But for now, I just wanted to send out another big thank you to all of you who have subscribed, watched the videos. It's amazing that we're over 1,000 subscribers. That's actually very, very cool. So until next time, guys, I will see you in the next video.